covers this.
All right. So I have noticed that a number of you have not, was there anybody that's new here today that didn't come last time? Do you all have the papers that I gave you from last time with the group stuff? Can you put your groups together and staple them so that I can set them up in D2L? So if you give them to whoever was your spokesperson, and you'll staple those, that would be very helpful for me. I appreciate it. Thank you for that. Is there anybody in here who has not taken the pretest?
My paper's in my car.
The papers in your car. Just as long as your name is on one of those, so I mostly need it for so I can set up the groups in D2L. So if you don't have it, you can bring it to me
Yeah.
next time. Let me check. Let's see if this is working. Okay, it sounds like it's working. Good deal.
Do you have your paper on you? I think so.
Cool. All right. Was this for? Okay, so you didn't have.
She's getting hers.
Okay. Is nobody else from your group here?
I didn't bring mine. I
Okay.
left that one.
All right.
I'm missing one.
Okay, cool. If you bring them next time, just so I can have those. And then everybody, let's see, you're with,
Molly and Mitch.
okay, I need to staple those together. Anybody else need to turn them in? Sorry, I forgot to collect those at the end of class last time. So I thought that, were there 4 groups? 3? There were only 3 groups? Okay, all right. I'm gonna stick these in the duck basket so I don't forget them this time, so I don't walk off and leave them and not set things up. All right, so when I created the PowerPoints for this class, I did them as narrated PowerPoints, and I have attempted multiple times to turn off the narration of the PowerPoints, and it doesn't work. So I am not sure what is going on with the technology there, but I'm just gonna have to do it this way. I can't launch the PowerPoint presentation. I have literally tried everything I can to stop it. And I just need to totally redo the PowerPoint presentation so that it won't redo it, but I'm kind of inherently lazy. So I did not do that yet. And so we'll just have to do it like this. So I apologize that it's not like the launch presentation of the PowerPoint. It's not gonna take up the whole screen. If you can't see it, let me know so that I can maybe make it the screen. It should be open. I think I unlocked it. Let's see if I unlocked it. I think I unlocked the door. Now it's unlocked. As I alluded to last time, when I first started asking to teach classes in ethics, the dean of the college at the time said, our students need substantive skills that they can use to go out and get a job. And ethics, as we sort of discussed last time, doesn't seem to be one of those hard skills that you can put down on your resume and say, I have these talents or abilities the way you can if you have, all of your accounting classes and you know something about double entry bookkeeping. And then Enron happened. And so that's one of the reasons I use this case, even though the textbook in its current edition has stopped, I think, using Enron, because for many of you, Enron happened way before you could remember, right? It was a long time ago. So it was in 2000, 2001 that things started to fall apart at Enron. It was the 7th largest Fortune 500 company at the time that it fell apart. It filed for bankruptcy protection on December 2nd, 2001. And when I would ask students at the time that I started teaching this class, do you understand what happened with Enron? They would all shake their heads and say yes. And then I would start questioning them to see if they really understood. And it was, no, they really didn't understand what the financial irregularities were. So Enron was using what were called special project entities, which were basically shell corporations that they were using to, in a very simplistic way, the accountants in the building, Dr. Walker across the hall would probably be horrified at my oversimplification of this, but they were using it to basically shuttle the debt that Enron was accumulating off of its books and onto these entities that were funded with Enron stock. And of course, this is kind of like a Ponzi scheme, and it all came crashing down. So senior executives who had huge stock in Enron were able to sell their stock while their employees were locked out of their 401ks. And so a lot of people went from being very wealthy one day to having nothing the next, and having to face the fact that they were probably going to have to work a lot longer than they wanted to. So this case, along with WorldCom and Tyco, led to them starting to say, AACSB, starting to be more interested in the ethics that we are teaching in our business courses. And so we started to see a movement towards offering business ethics and ethics in specific courses. I have argued that we should probably keep the marketing ethics, because marketing is the only fully integrated function of the firm. We have a business ethics course, and it is now required, I think. But ethics is, if you take a teleological approach, and we'll talk about what that is, can be very context specific. And so you have to recognize why it is in the context, in the profession in which you operate, why it's important how you make ethical decisions within that framework, and how you go about coming up with codes of ethics if you're going to have a professional organization. And it's one of the things that we have struggled with. Historically, unlike the legal profession or the accounting profession, we haven't had strict codes of ethics, but we're trying to develop those in some form or fashion in many of the professional organizations now that we have started. So the AMA has a code, the University Sales Center Alliance is attempting to develop codes and things like that. And so ethics becomes an important topic of discussion. And it's one that I find, as I suggested on Tuesday, it's one of those things that it is a pervasive activity. We constantly make value judgments, but what I find is that we oftentimes make them poorly. We think that ethics is like a sort of gut reaction to things. It makes you, certain behavior makes you go, ugh, right? That's just not appropriate. And it doesn't seem to be something like, let's say, lowercase sigma equals the square root of uppercase sigma xi minus u squared over n I equals 1 to the n. Anybody know what that is? How many of you have had statistics? Only 3 of you have had, 4 of you have had statistics. How many of you have not had business statistics? I'm taking it right now. Okay. Those of you who have had statistics, do you know what this is?
I don't remember. I took statistics for sciences.
You took statistics for the sciences. You'll find it in the sciences as well.
Well, that was 3 years ago.
That was 3 years ago. We've slept since then. We've had an information dump.
Hopefully got it right on
You
the
did,
test.
you did this where you studied for the exam and then you thought, I'll never use that ever again, and you dumped the information out as quickly as you possibly could. If If you take a picture of it, I bet your phone can find it. I bet Google AI can find it. This is called just-in-time information. This is one of the things that an AI world is wonderful about, right? If I had my glass, if I had my Meta glasses, I'd look at it and ask, what's this? And it would probably tell me. I love-
Standard deviation.
It's this formula for standard deviation. So what is the standard deviation? What is standard deviation a measure of? Anybody know? You get a duck. By the way, I put the ducks on the table, so when I tell you you can grab a duck, you can grab a duck.
I'm waiting for my brother's answer.
You're waiting for whose answer?
My brother's.
You're waiting for your brother's answer as to what standard
He
deviation
said
is?
he told me that.
He told you what the formula was?
Yeah.
You didn't use AI?
No.
Wow.
It shows how far off the average.
Okay, yeah, it's a measure, it's what we call a measure of dispersion. It tells you how alike a set of numbers are. The greater the standard deviation, the less alike a set of numbers are. And so when you look at things like a scatter plot and a regression, regression will calculate something called the standard error of the estimate. And when you look at a scatter plot, so you plot known numbers, known cases on this, chart. And then what regression tries to do is it tries to fit a line, and again, your statistics professors would probably be horrified, as close as it can to those dots to make predictions. Now, the closer those dots are to that line, the better the fit of the line. Well, standard deviation tells you this for a set of numbers before you calculate the regression, how alike that set of numbers is. If, for example, we took the ages of everybody in this classroom, I would be willing to bet that the standard deviation would be fairly low because you all are about the same age in this class, by and large on the whole. When I first started teaching at UCO, I was 22 and the average age of our freshmen was 29. So I was considerably younger than the average age of our freshmen. And the reason for that was that at the time, the economy was not great. It was recovering. And we had largely a dependent economy on oil and natural gas. We didn't have a very diversified economy. And so there had been this huge crash in the 80s that was still lingering. And so a lot of people were going to school later in life. They were going back to college because that's kind of what happens when the economy gets bad. You got to figure out how you're going to get a different job, right? So there was a much bigger age dispersion in my classes at that time than there is today. Now, the reason I tell you all this in an ethics class, you didn't think that you would have to know statistics in an ethics class, is because when we talk about the things that we're going to talk about in this class, this looks really hard, but if I give you a set of numbers, everybody should be able to come up with the same answer. And if you don't come up with the same answer, something's gone wrong. And we can figure out where that something went wrong, right? So if you know, this is really kind of easy if you know how to do it. So what is this formula? And by the way, you don't normally see this. This is the standard deviation for an entire population or a universe, right? You normally see samples. It's very hard. We think, for example, every 10 years in the United States, they do something called a census, and it's not really a census. It's a really big sample because it's impossible to actually get, we try really hard to get every single person counted in the US. They do really try, but it's not easy to do that. And why is that? People move, they don't fill out the form. They send people out to your house if you don't fill out the form and try to get the information from you. But you may not answer the door. People don't like the government. There are homeless people that are hard to find, and they do actually try to get them. They actually go into homeless encampments, these census takers, and try to get counts. But it's hard to get everybody. If we just defined this classroom as our population, it would be easy to get a census. And we could use this formula. But that's a very small population. What is a population in statistics? The population is a well-defined collection of units. So if we just limit it to this classroom, it's easy to get the census. So normally what we have is we have samples that we look at in statistics. We normally can't get an entire population. And so what we do is we look at this formula, which is S equals sigma x I bar minus the mu squared over n minus 1, because where I equals the nth, or I equals 1 to the nth, that should be I equals 1 to the nth. So you lose 1 degree of freedom for using a sample instead of a population. If you know how to do this, so if I give you a set of numbers, what we're going to do, and I say this is the population, this is the ages of everybody who's enrolled in marketing ethics on Tuesday and Thursday in the fall semester at the University of Central Oklahoma, calculate the standard deviation. You have a population, so we can use this formula. What are we going to do? Well, we start here. This tells us to sum everything to the right of it. We're going to do the parentheses first. So we're going to start with xi, and we're going to have to figure out what the mean is, because that's the symbol for mean. And then we're going to subtract the mean from every number. We're going to square that. And we're going to divide by n and take the square root of the number that we get. And that will give us the standard deviation. And if we go through the formula correctly, everybody should have the same answer. It doesn't seem like that is the case with ethics. If I ask you really hard questions, we will come up with lots of different answers to those hard questions. Like, for example, should we allow the marketing of GLP-1s off of label or off of FDA approved labeling? What are GLP-1s? Anybody know?
It's a weight loss peptide, right?
They were invented not as a weight loss peptide, but they were invented to help treat what? Do you know? What's the official thing that they were
Type
used?
2 diabetes.
Yeah, you can get a duck, by the way. You can get. They were developed to lower A1C in diabetics. You can get a duck. That's what they're approved for, mostly. And they noticed that people who were taking them, some of these diabetics, lost weight. It was an unintended side effect of the GLP-1s. They've now started designing them for different things besides diabetes, to treat different. I mean, one of the things that they noticed is, for example, that some of the GLP-1s seem to be effective in curing or lessening the symptoms of addiction, because they work in a couple of ways, as I understand them. One is they make you feel satisfied, and so you don't eat as much, which is one of the reasons why you lose weight. They also slow the digestion, so your stomach stays full longer, and they have this impact on alcoholics. They started noticing that they were drinking less. And so there are now all of these people that are prescribing them off-label. And lots of people are going and taking them. They're running to their doctors and taking them for things that were not FDA cleared. The same thing has happened with a lot of drugs. There's a drug called finasteride. It was marketed under the label Propecia for hair loss. That started out as being approved for the treatment of enlarged prostate in men. And then they noticed that some of these men who were bald started growing hair or stopped losing hair. And so they started prescribing it for hair loss, male pattern baldness. Should we allow that? Should we allow, once a drug is, so Botox was another one. Botox was initially approved for the treatment of, I believe it was something called dystonia. I actually had a student that had this disease at one time. Dystonia, it's a degenerative nerve condition where you lose control and the muscles contract. It can be very painful. A woman named Diane Rehm, who used to have a talk show on NPR, which my friend's father used to refer to as, I like to listen to the smoker. That's what he would call her. Because she talked like this. And she was never a smoker. She had dystonia. And hers affected her voice box, which meant that she had, so they initially developed this drug. It's botulism poisoning, and they shoot it into muscles, and it stops the muscle contraction. That's not what Botox is used for primarily today. Anybody know what Botox is primarily used for and marketed for today?
Not aging.
Yeah, it's you can get a duck. It's an anti-aging, you can get a duck treatment. Because what it does is when it stops the muscle contraction, right? If you have lines in your forehead, which I probably need to go get some Botox, it lessens that and the lines go away. They stop. Because it paralyzes those muscles. So if I ask you these questions, like should we be allowed to use, should doctors be allowed to prescribe something off label? I would be willing to bet that we'd have well, should you do that? One of the things that happens with Botox, if you use it for anti-aging and lines, fine lines and wrinkles, is you can paralyze somebody, and it may be semi-permanent. My mother, who was very vain, had this happen to her. She loved Botox, loved going to the doctor and getting Botox. And they managed one time, they shot too much and it dropped her eye and she looked like she had a stroke. Now, it only lasted about 6 months for her that time, but it can be permanent. That's a risk. Should we allow them to do things like that? You're shaking your head no. Why?
Because the thing about Botox is that it gets rid of your facial features. So say goodbye to having expressions on your face.
Mhm.
And a lot of actors and actresses are getting Botox and their acting is just not doing well because they don't have facial movement.
Mhm.
So that's why I say no.
But that's their choice, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things, a counter argument to your argument is, you can get another duck. A counter argument to your argument is that if you allow people to be free, they may choose differently than you. And if they are made aware and they're making a rational choice, shouldn't they be allowed to do that? I don't know. One of the things that we have seen happening with the direct to consumer marketing of pharmaceutical products is that people are now running to their doctors and asking. That's not the way it was in the past. Historically, if you went back to the 1950s, before drug companies really started marketing to consumers directly through advertisements, your doctor would say, you know, I think you've got, you know, the flu, and we should probably give you, I don't know if they had Tamiflu in the 1950s, but, you know, we should probably give you Tamiflu so that you lessen the symptoms. Or you have a bacterial sinus infection and we'll give you antibiotics. And now we see people running to the doctor, you know, do you have these symptoms? Well, Botox may be right for you. Prozac may be right for you. And so when we talk about these things, they don't seem to have formulas like this that we can run through and come up with an easy answer. Students in this class oftentimes tell me that they leave the class with more questions than they started with, which is a good thing overall. Does that mean that there are no proofs in ethics? The way we can prove that something is the standard deviation of the population of the marketing ethics class in terms of age or test scores or any other number of things that we can do. Are there proofs? Again, it doesn't seem like we did this, the Pythagorean theorem last time, you know, a squared 3, 4, 5 plus b squared equals c squared for a rectilinear triangle. And it doesn't seem like that. And so a lot of times, and what the dean was initially reacting to when I said I wanted to teach this class was that it seemed like, well, what are students really going to get out of it? If you end up with more questions than you have answers, why is this necessary? Why should we do this? And then these scandals happened, and AACSB became more interested, and ACBSP, which was the accreditation that we had before AACSB, became more interested in these things, and they started requiring that we find some ways of inserting ethics. Now, what they did in a lot of colleges is they just make it part of every class curriculum. And that's okay, other than I'm sort of unusual as a business professor. Now, the highest degree that you can get from a college, the highest degree that's awarded is something called the PhD. There we go. Why is it, what does PhD stand for? What does MD stand for?
Medical doctor.
Medical doctor. So what does PhD stand for? The D is doctor.
Doctor of Philosophy.
Doctor of Philosophy. How many philosophy courses did I have in my PhD program? 0. None. I got a PhD. My specialization was in marketing. So why do they call it the PhD? Why didn't they call it the MRKTD, marketing doctorate? Why is it that we award this degree for the study of something that's not philosophy? Well, because philosophy answers 3 great questions. And these questions are applicable to all disciplines and all people and all places at all times. What are these 3 great questions? They are the question of knowledge. What is it I can know? And how can I know it? The question of knowledge. That's why we get the PhD, because as marketing professors, we're not taking courses in, you know, pure philosophy, but we are seeking to understand things and increase overall human knowledge. That's why we get the PhD. Because what you are doing as a scholar in a field is contributing through your dissertation to the body of knowledge and through your research. So I am what's classified as a scholarly academic at UCO. Doesn't that sound important? Not really. You all are not impressed. What that means is that I have a PhD and I continue to research in my field and publish so that I am relevant. So I have to produce scholarly work that goes through a peer review process to be published in academic journals in order to maintain that classification. So you are attempting to contribute to the body of knowledge in a meaningful way, and that's why we call it the PhD, because you're not studying things like what is pure logic in marketing education when you get the PhD, or what is, the meaning of life. We're trying to answer smaller portions of that question, which is why you get the PhD. And so it stands for Doctor of Philosophy, and you're supposed to be focused on these three great questions. And again, these apply to all disciplines and all people at all places at all times. The question of knowledge, what is it I can know and how can I know it? This is not trivial. We think we know a lot of things that we may not know. What is this, for example, that I am pointing at right here? Who's a table? Why did you say it's a table?
Because it looks like a table.
It looks like a table? Really?
What you're pointing at?
Yeah, this is a table. What makes it a table?
The way that it's made. The rectangular shape.
All tables are rectangular?
No, sir, there's some that are circles too.
So all tables are either rectangular or circles.
No,
Why is this a table? If you come up with it's rectangular, is everything that's a rectangle a table?
no,
Is every table a rectangle?
No.
Is every table a circle?
no,
Is every table a circle or a rectangle?
no.
What other kinds of tables could you have? You could have square. You could have triangles. There's a company in California that manufactures coffee tables out of unprocessed hardwoods. So they take, cuts of, I don't know, giant redwoods or something, and these are kind of all different shapes. Why is this a table? I don't think this is a table. What do you usually do with a table? You eat. Are you all eating at it? So I think it's a desk. Because that's what you're using it for, right? Is a desk. Aren't you using it? You're using it to hold your computers. Some of you have actually brought notebooks, writing on it. So why isn't it a desk? Is it a desk? You're shaking your heads yes. Why is it a desk?
Because we're performing work on it, that's what you do it is.
Okay, we're performing, that's the utilization. So the use of it makes it that thing, is that right? So if I do this, have I transformed it from a desk into a chair?
Yeah.
You're shaking your head no. They say yes.
It's still classified as a desk, but you're just sitting on it. It doesn't.
I don't even know if it's a desk. We can't decide if it's a desk. Some of you think it's a table. I think it's a chair right now. What is it? You see, this is, if we can't even decide what something simple is like this, how is it that we're really gonna know anything? How is it that we can know if we can't even decide what this is, we all think we know what it is. Some of the answers that I've gotten in the past are, it's a table because it doesn't have drawers. That's an interesting argument. Do all desks have drawers? No. When you were a kid, I don't know if they had these, they were horrible. When I was a kid, I remember these in classrooms. I don't know if they still make kids do this anymore, but we sat in desks, what they called desks, that were basically a chair with a tabletop on top of it, and it had a cubby hole underneath. Anybody remember these from like kindergarten, first grade? They were miserable. They had like they were made of wood on the chair, on the seat part and the back generally. They were highly uncomfortable, you know. And when your parents came for parent-teacher conference day, your teacher would make the parents sit in like these little, like squat down into these little tiny things. I was born and raised in Santa Fe, New Mexico. 30 miles up the road from Santa Fe, New Mexico is Los Alamos National Laboratory. Anybody know what Los Alamos National Laboratory was famous for?
The nuclear bomb.
They invented, yeah, you get a duck. They invented the nuclear bomb at Los Alamos. That's where Oppenheimer had the lab. My grandfather was part of the Manhattan Project, which developed the bomb at Los Alamos. So because there's this nuclear lab in Los Alamos, it was one of the direct targets when we were involved in the Cold War with what was then called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR, which is today largely called Russia, which was just one republic of the group that ultimately split up. During the Cold War, Los Alamos National Labs, which is 30 miles up the road from Santa Fe, where I grew up, was one of the major targets that the Soviets had if they were going to start a nuclear war with us, which is why, and I went to Roman Catholic school, and so the nuns would tell us that, you know, we would have these drills, these nuclear drills, because we could be struck by a nuclear, like you in Oklahoma. How many of you grew up in Oklahoma? You had tornado drills in high school or grade school, didn't you? Where they would tell you to go out and get into the room that didn't have any glass doors in the center of the building and get down by the walls. You had these drills when, do you all have the, we had nuclear, we didn't have tornadoes in New Mexico. We had nuclear drills. So they would tell us to get down and put our heads inside our desk. I'm like, why? So that they can identify the dental records more easily? The nuns didn't think that was funny. I thought it was hysterical. I thought I was very clever. They did not think I was very funny at all. I had a student several semesters ago write on my student evaluations, "You're not very funny." Yes, I am. I'm hysterical. This is the Granny Gary Comedy Hour. So we can settle that. You don't have to write that on my student evaluations now. You're not funny. Yeah, I am. Yeah, you'll find out. So we had these nuclear drills. We'd have to put our heads in the desk, I guess, so that when the bomb exploded, they could identify our dental records and know who was dead. Because at Los Alamos, 30 miles away, if the Soviets dropped a bomb, if they sent an ICBM, which stands for Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, we were going to die, right? And that's just, it's pretty close to ground zero there. And we had another target, which was called Sandia National Labs, which is where they built the detonating device for the Manhattan Project, which is in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My grandmother was, again, a part of that project, and she worked for the labs. And my grandfather worked for the Manhattan Project as well. He died, and that's how my grandmother got her job. The president of the labs came to her and said, "Tunny," that was her nickname, "we have a job for you if you want it." You know, that was the way businesses or organizations in the past operated. They took care of their people. And so when my grandfather died, they made her the classified records librarian. of the lab. So she classified all of the nuclear secrets. She had top secret clearance. So we have these desks, right, that don't look anything like this. They don't look anything, I don't know, is this a desk? Or is it something else? It's got wheels on it. You can roll it around. I don't know. If we can't even decide on this kind of stuff, how are we gonna decide on anything? In our research, this question is important. Let me give you an example. Let's see. Find it. All right, let's look at, let's see if I can blow this up. Can you all now read question 18 at that level? Or do I need to increase it some more? Can you read it?
Yeah.
So this is part, I used this instrument in my dissertation research. This is called the Ethical Positioning Questionnaire by Donald Forsyth. And what it does is it determines on a 2x2 matrix, so 4 squares, where you fall on a politically ideological spectrum. And based on your responses to these 20 questions, 18 says rigidly codifying an ethical position that prevents certain types of actions can stand in the way of better human relations and adjustment. Now, this is a scale that's widely used in ethics, widely used. We give this to a lot of people. I use this scale because it's been a validated scale. What do I mean by validated? Well, scales, when we develop scales, you want them to be both reliable and have some basis in the underlying factor that you are trying to analyze. In other words, they should measure accurately what you say they're measuring, and they should be reliable. They should be consistent in that measurement if they are valid instruments. So we do these tests to validate scales before we use them. So in my dissertation research now, I used this scale because it was already developed, and then I had to develop another scale. That was in order to contribute meaningfully to the body of knowledge in my PhD program, you had to come up with something new. So I had to use this scale and then combine it with a scale that I developed and that I tested and then put it in my dissertation, a combination of these scales to try and come up with measures of things. And if you want a really good cure for insomnia, I'll loan you I have my dissertation down in my office. I'll loan it to you and you can use it as your cure for insomnia. Now, the reason I point this out is because this scale has been tested and validated, and they think it's a valid scale. And if you look at question 18, there's a problem with this question. Anybody spot the problem? Rigidly codifying an ethical position that prevents certain types of actions could stand in the way of better human relations and adjustment. What's wrong with that question? Anybody want to take a shot at what's wrong with the question? Yes.
It says like it could,
It could.
it's not like,
Okay, so you think, you can have the doc. You think that it should say it does. It should be definitive. Maybe that may be a criticism I hadn't thought about, and that may be a valid point. Is that you think that if you say it could, you're equivocating, and it means that there's room for debate within the question. Okay. You answered this question on a Likert scale. A Likert scale is, you all have answered questions in Likert scales. You've done student evaluations probably of your classes, and it says, like highly agree, neutral, disagree, highly disagree, right? You can have more than that. That's a 5-point scale. You can have 7-point scales. There's debate as to whether or not the scales that are used should have 7 or 9 points. Everybody agrees that you need to have kind of and for most part, that you need to have an odd number in the scale, right? But beyond that, there's a lot of debate. So you're thinking that maybe we should clarify this to say rigidly codifying an ethical position that prevents certain types of actions would stand in the way of better human relations and adjustment. I think you may be onto something there, and I hadn't thought about that one, so that's a good job. Anything else that you can see that's wrong with it? No one wants to take a shot at
First
this?
part,
What's first, which
the
part?
first part, which is rigidly codifying an ethical position.
Okay, what's
Um,
wrong with that?
Well, it's just saying that they're arranging the laws of an ethical position that prevents like the types of actions that and it like literally what it says. I think it's wrong in a sense that I don't know, I can't really point it out, but like if a position is already ethical, like an ethical position, I feel like you arrange that preventing different types of actions, then it of already like, I don't know, I'm sorry.
Okay, you can have a duck. Let's talk about what you're talking about. Rigidly, let's start with rigidly. What does rigidly mean?
Rigidly is like, I'm bending, like a way of like changing.
Okay. We're not changing,
We're not changing, okay.
right? If something's rigid, this thing that we can't decide what it is it rigid or flexible?
Oh, yeah.
It's not, it's like I'm leaning on it. It's not changing. So it's rigid. Codifying, you got that one. That means putting it into like a code. So, okay, rigidly codifying ethical positions could prevent certain types of actions or stand in the way of better human relations and adjustment. Anybody else want to take a shot at what's wrong with it? I hadn't thought about that. I think what you may be onto is that some people might not know what rigidly codifying means. Some people, I mean, like codifying, I think if we put it into the scale of what is readability, it comes up with probably that's a, more than a 12th grade level word. I don't know, I've never done it. But it's not a word that you hear every day in common parlance, right? So that could be a problem. Anybody else want to take a shot? This is what we call a double-barreled question. In that we're asking you about two things in the same question. And generally speaking, for validity and reliability, you need to not ask double-barreled questions. The reason you don't ask double-barreled questions is because I could agree or disagree with one of the elements while not agreeing or disagreeing with the other element. You are collapsing two elements into one question, and that's problematic. The problem is human relations and adjustment. Human relations is not the same thing as being adjusted, well adjusted, is it? Is it the same thing? Are human relations the same thing as being well adjusted? They're not. Sociopathology, as I understand it, is not listed specifically in the DSM-5. But psychiatrists and psychologists find both sociopathology and psychopathology to be useful explainers of certain types of behaviors. I think the broader category that they list in the DSM-5, if I'm correct, is antisocial personality disorder. And they say it's on the spectrum of, sociopathology is a type of antisocial personality disorder. What's the difference between sociopathology and psychopathology? Anybody know? As I understand it, anybody know? Sociopaths are compulsive liars, generally, but they won't kill you. Psychopaths will kill you. Again, if we go over to the Department of Psychology, they're probably horrified at my overly simplistic classification of these terms. The reason I talk about this is because sociopaths are often very likable. They have good they can have good human relations. They can be charismatic, as I understand it, and charming. That's human relations. There's a psychiatrist or a psychologist, I can't remember which, who wrote a book called The Sociopath Next Door, and argues that there are more of them than you might think out there. Adjustment deals with whether or not you are internally consistent. You can be an introverted person and be well adjusted. So you may not have great human relations, but you may be a well-adjusted person. One of the things that's odd about me is that students oftentimes think, and when they go with me to competitions particularly, they think that I am sort of an extrovert, and I'm not naturally. I am a highly introverted person. I had to develop this over time because I wanted so badly to be a politician. Most of my family are lawyers and politicians, and so that's what I wanted to be, was a lawyer and a politician. And in order to be a politician, you have to talk to people. It was almost painful for me when I started in politics, because I'm not the kind of person that naturally goes in, when I was younger, that would walk into a party and start talking to people. I'm the kind of person that would stand against the back wall and ignore everybody. But if you're going to be a politician, you have to kind of talk to people. It kind of goes with the job, right? And I got elected to public office. My mother was a politician. She got elected to several public offices. All my uncles on my dad's side were lawyers, and some of them were judges, so they were elected. They were state judges, so they're politicians. And I wanted that so badly that I had to force myself to become more social. But that's not my norm. My normal state is I am perfectly happy going home and playing with my prairie dog and reading a book and being alone. That doesn't make me necessarily maladjusted, but I was not good at human relations to begin with. It's something that I had to develop, that I had to force myself out of my comfort zone to do, because I wanted something else so badly. So you can be an introvert and be well-adjusted and maybe not be good at human relations, or you could be an extrovert and be a sociopath and have great human relations, but not be well-adjusted. And so when we ask questions like this, we think we know what we're asking, and it turns out that maybe we don't. Maybe it's like, is this a table or is it a desk? How do we know what it is we can know? And how can we be certain? So, validity and reliability. Is the instrument measuring the thing that we think it's measuring? And is it reliable? So if we have a scale and it measures everybody 10 pounds heavier than they actually are, what problem does it have? Validity or reliability?
Reliability.
You think it's a reliability issue?
If everybody gets on.
No,
it,
it's
then-
reliably wrong. It's real, you can have a duck. It's reliably wrong. It's a validity issue. If it measured me as being 10 pounds heavier and you as being 7 pounds heavier, we would have a reliability issue, right? Then it's not, then it's like something's wrong with the springs and it's coming up with different stuff all the time. It's reliably wrong by 10 pounds. So it's a reliability issue. You can see how hard this is, right? This question of knowledge. And why is this important for marketers? Well, when we go to sell things, we want to be able to communicate effectively with our consumer. And it turns out that maybe we're not really being all that effective in communication. We think we know what our ads are saying or our persuasive appeals, and maybe we don't. Maybe we're not hitting the mark at all. And so this question of knowledge is enormously important. So the question of governance. Now, when we talk about the question of governance, we can be talking about government and the laws that we make, right? But we can also use governance in a different sense. Organizations have to govern themselves. As a class, we will have certain governance in this course. It's called the curriculum that I will teach you. That is set out and laid out in a contract that I have with you called a what? Syllabus, right. You can have bear. That's not a duck. I call it the duck hunt, but that's a bear, right? We're gonna hunt the bear. And it's kind of a, I don't know, the bear's got issues. You know, the bear's head is definitely malformed. So, we're gonna be governed by this thing called the syllabus, which is my contract with you, which tells you, you know, like what we're gonna do. It's an outline of the course and how you're gonna get your grade in here, and that's governance. It's the rules of the game that we're going to engage in this particular setting. So governance is not just government, it's also how do we organize stuff? So it applies to how do we organize businesses so that we maximize, for example, profits or shareholders' wealth or whatever. So governance is another question that's critically important in all disciplines. What is it I can know and how can I know it? So what is it I can know is called metaphysics. That's the study of reality in philosophy. And then epistemology is how can I know it? U-P-I-S-T-E. U-P-I-S-T. I can't spell today. U-I-S-T-E. M-O-L-O-G-Y. epistemology is, okay, if there's this reality, how can I know it? So in thinking about this question, well, maybe what we could know in thinking about this question is that we ought to maybe break the question into two. Rigidly codifying an ethical position that prevents certain types of actions could stand in the way of better human relations. Rigidly codifying an ethical position that prevents certain types of actions could stand in the way of better human adjustment. Right? And then we might have something. Now, the reason I think Forsyth collapsed it is because he wanted to have 20 questions. Because that's a nice even number. If you have the other way, we're going to have what? 21 questions and your scale is not going to be balanced. Because there's 10 questions that deal with idealism, and there are 10 questions that deal with how relativist you are. In other words, are you a sort of a Pollyanna? And, within that Pollyanna, are you also relative in your thinking to come up with this 2x2 matrix? So the question of knowledge, the question of governance, how is it we're going to organize things? How are we going to organize ourselves? How are we going to build businesses? And that's a governance question. How are we going to start a business? How are we going to go about engaging in the business? What are going to be sort of the things that we sell? Those are all sorts of questions of governance. And then the third great question is the question of conduct. What is the right action? So we will look at all of these in a marketing context. What is ethical marketing? So the question of knowledge, the question of conduct, and the question of conduct, knowledge, governance, and conduct are the three things that we'll look at from a philosophical perspective. Now, why are these important? Well, because, again, I think a lot of times we think we know what it is we're saying. When we go out as salespeople and we meet with our customers, we think that we are communicating with them and we think that we know what we're saying to them. And do we know that they are actually receptive, right? And how do we know that? There's something called social styles. How many of you, are any of you sales majors? Only one? Have you had which courses in sales have you had so far?
I've taken most of them advanced sales class.
Okay. Have you done the social styles questionnaire?
I don't think we did.
Wait, is that the one that's the we have the credit and it's like
There's driver, analytical,
Yes, we did.
amiable.
No, I'll remember those.
We've
Yeah.
forgotten that. Well,
Yeah, we did do that.
okay. How is it that we can know that we're communicating well, using a social style with our customer? Is that ethical? If you can figure out somebody's social style, you can manipulate them. Can't you? If you can combine social styles with something called psychographics, which we can learn about in marketing through like the VALS, which stands for Values, Attitudes, and Lifestyle scale, you can figure out how to talk to somebody and what motivates them. And those are powerful tools. When I teach the sales class, I do this exercise where I have people go through and identify decision makers at companies and try to figure out, based on publicly available information, what they think the social style is going to be and what they think the VALS is going to be. And with those two things, if you can figure that out, and you can figure out people's, with a rough approximation, without giving them these instruments, you can figure out pretty easily what you think people are based on the stuff that they post online. I think you can. It's not perfect, but you can get close. So you can figure out how to talk to them, right? So the social styles are analytical, driver, amiable, and expressive. It's a 2x2 matrix, like the EPQ comes up with the 2x2 matrix. The social styles is a 2x2 matrix that basically deals with how you communicate. So of those four, for example, so again, there's driver, analytical, amiable, and expressive. So drivers are people who are sort of just the facts kind of people. And they want their answers quickly. Analyticals are just the facts and they want a lot of it. So they may not necessarily want it quickly. Amiables are just nice. They're just nice people. And expressives, well, you can think of those as the theater kids. What social style do you think I am?
Driver, yeah.
You think I'm a driver?
No.
I'm a driver. Yeah. I don't want a lot of like external, I want like, give me the facts and tell me quickly, right? I don't want a whole lot in between. I'm a driver. Now most people have a dominant social style and sort of a backup. My backup is analytical. Right? My mother, who was an entrepreneur, was an expressive. She was a fantastic storyteller. She liked people. She owned businesses that were social in nature. She was definitely an expressive. When we used to do exams on Scantrons here, I would charge, if you didn't bring your Scantron, I would charge you 50 cents for a Scantron. I had them, I charge you 50 cents. Now, I didn't purchase them, the school did, so I gave the money to our department head. She was an amiable, she just gave them away. And I'm like, Stacia, no, they're supposed to have a Scantron. Bring the Scantron. If you don't bring the Scantron, that's fine. It's 50 cents. Driver, she was an amiable. Just get the Scantrons away. I'm like, you're training them to not bring Scantrons. That's bad. We have a school that has limited resources. And you're just giving it away. Like, it's nothing. Like, it's not a resource. It's a scarce resource. They're expensive. How many of you used a how many of you have used a Scantron? Does anybody still use them? Do they really?
Only in the science
I did
department,
last
they always
semester.
did, but.
Really?
I did last semester in my stats class.
Okay. After COVID, the Scantron machines kind of went away.
I did a lot my freshman and sophomore year.
Yeah,
That was.
in those like
22, 23.
American National Government classes
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Yeah, they use a lot of Scantrons. So if you can figure out the social style and then you can couple it with this other thing, you can manipulate people because you can appeal to them in the way that they're going to be most receptive, and what motivates them, what they're going to be interested in. You combine those two things and you have enormously powerful tools to manipulate. Is that ethical? Should we do that? Should we teach you these skills? In the sales program, we teach you this stuff and you can use it really effectively. If you walk into a sales call and the prospect is sitting there like this, you probably don't have much time, right? You're probably dealing with a driver and You know, we do these sales competitions. You get to go. I have the only program on campus, the sales program, that can say we have 100% placement of our majors and minors, and 80% of our majors make over 6 figures in their first year. I've had students that have made 6 figures in an internship. Nursing can say they have 100% placement of their majors. They don't have a minor in nursing. They can't say they make over 6 figures. Now, you can make a lot as a nurse. And so we do these sales competitions. We go to these sales competitions. We're going to go to one in November called the International Collegiate Sales Competition, hosted by Florida State University. Anybody going to go? Are you going to go to that?
I was invited.
You were invited to go to by Dr. Goad?
Yeah. It's in talks.
What?
It's in talks.
It's a lot of fun. You know, you get to go and everything's paid for.
I'm not
So
a good speed seller.
you're not a good speed seller?
No.
Is that what she wants you to do, is speed sell rather than role play?
Yeah.
I can give you a video and help you do that, help you make a pitch. You can figure out by the environmental cues that a prospect has what's going to motivate them. And so these are powerful tools that we have. If you are not ethical in sales, if you are a sociopath, you may be really successful at this and highly unethical at the same time. So the question of conduct is important. These 3 great questions that we'll talk a lot about. If we can figure out the answers to these questions, and the thing that philosophy does for us when we think about these things is it will make us better at marketing, because it forces you to think rationally and critically about these concepts in a very methodical, rational, comprehensive manner. And what do I mean by a rational, comprehensive manner? So a lot of times what you'll hear is you'll hear people say, and they say it all the time, and I hate this. They'll say, well, that's just common sense. We just need some common sense. You hear it all the time from politicians. Common sense. We just need common sense. No such thing. There's no such thing as common sense. Doesn't exist. There's rational, comprehensive thought, and there's magical thinking. What do I mean by this? I'll give you an example. When I was married, our microwave went out. So I start compiling a notebook on all the things that microwaves can do. Now, when I was a kid, microwaves had 2 dials on them. The first microwave that my family got was $1,000. It did not have a turntable. It was just a box that had a door and these 2 dials. And the dial was low, medium, and high. And the other dial was time. That's all it did. You put the stuff, so you had to, like, if you were gonna put in a TV dinner or something like that in the old-fashioned microwave, you had to turn it on, you know, whatever it said to set the setting at was usually high. And then you'd have to kind of every couple of minutes turn the product yourself, a quarter turn. Otherwise, you'd end up with something that was, you know, hotter than hell on one side and frozen on the other. These microwaves now have these turntables that turn it around, right? And they have all these different buttons on them. Like, you can get microwaves that the first 6 digits, all you do is hit that and it will go for that exact time. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. They have microwaves that you hit the popcorn button. You throw the bag of popcorn in there, you hit that button, and it will automatically do it. All these features, right? So I start compiling this notebook of what it is that we want in a microwave, what's important. You know, like the popcorn button's not terrible. I hate popcorn. Hate it. Don't like it. Don't need that button. That's a feature that I don't want. So we can eliminate that. Can you eliminate that? I don't know, like some microwaves, I think you can. So I start like compiling this notebook. Rational, comprehensive, of all the things, all the benefits, the features, the costs. So microwaves generally vary in terms of cost by, wattage and things like that, and size and all these features that they have. And I start compiling the notebook. And I come home one day and there's a microwave. And I'm like, where did this come from? Robin? Why went I bought it? Did you consult the notebook? No. I just bought it. Why'd you buy that one? It matched our other appliance. No. Rational, comprehensive thought. It's pretty. Not rational, comprehensive thought. Right? So there's critical thinking, and that's what philosophy teaches us to do. Come up with rational, comprehensive thought, and then there's magical thinking. And the better you get at coming up with rational, comprehensive thought, the better you're going to be at your job, ultimately, in marketing. So that's why philosophy is important. I'm out of time, so I will take a picture of where we stopped. If you got ducks, come and see me so I can give you those points. If you get more than 7 ducks, by the way, it is bonus points. So
It's already wrinkled. Sorry about that. Is that your name on yours?
Yeah,
Let me do that real quick.
okay.
So much.
So you're at 30 points.
I don't think you
All right.
know what
What?
no, do we give them?
I just put them back.
Thank you.
Sorry, I gave you the wrong information.
No, you're really sweet.
Are you related to the Aubrey McClendon,
No.
Chesapeake McClendon's last name?
There's a lot of them.
What was it? One? I think you actually got 2. Anybody else get ducks?
Yes.
Last name?
Dozier. U-Z-I-E-R.
You have 2. Just stick it in there. How many did you get? 2.
Yeah, last name is due to you.
I
Sorry.
wonder why this was supposed to have It should be J's.
Two discussion ones. Article review.
What's that? I should update. So discussion steps. There's no. Save. So should. Okay, let's see. There's that.
I know how to make sure we have the right class for a second. Yeah, they're up.
I don't know why I did this the other day. Is that it? You're all good? Thanks. Yes.
What are the ducks for?
Oh, it's how I keep track of class participation. I can't remember at the end of the class, people talk and then I get lost, so
No, that's definitely a new one that I've seen.
I use the ducks. Somebody was asking me like, and I started this long before the Wrangler thing. You know, everybody goes to Jeep Wrangler now, they trade ducks, it's a thing.
Yeah, I've heard of that too a little bit, yeah.
I was asked if I was like, now I don't own a Jeep Wrangler.